9.3. When you think of the arts, what do you think of? That's what the question was a little bit ago.
That's one question. I think another question we're going to explore is do arts, I'm going to say plural or singular,
Right.
do the arts really matter in our life, right? Is that just superfluous? Is that just something extra, or is it essential?
Well, I mean, I guess I would come back with that is, do you read? Do you enjoy a good cup of coffee? Do you listen to music? Do you like to view paintings? I mean, it goes kind of on and on and on. Do you like to read the Psalms? I mean, all those things, I guess, would answer that question. Are they important to you? Because they might be important to you in ways you don't even understand it, maybe.
Yeah, well, let's explore the importance of arts, even in the Christian life as well, with Pastor Keith Case. Thank you so much for being back with us. I love this series that we're working through.
I love being here with you guys. And I still remember, Eric, you said, I think it was the last time I was on, you were talking about in this whole idea of us being artwork, God's artwork, or the temple. And you said, when we read about the temple in the Old Testament, people see how ornate, how elaborate, how beautiful it is. But we have a hard time applying that to ourselves when, we're told in scriptures that we're now the temple.
Right.
To see that artistry in us, right?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that since I left. So I'm just like, maybe we should be interviewing Eric right now.
All right, Eric, we're turning the tables on you. Do the arts really matter?
Tell us more, Eric.
I think the arts can change a child into a curiosity, to a creative, to somebody who wants to learn. And I think that can then change maybe how a school looks at itself, and then maybe how a community looks at itself. And I think it can start from very, very small things. And I think that same thing can happen to a church. I think a church can learn a lot about itself when it starts to not just interact with the arts, but start to create art.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a lot of that.
Woo. See, I told you.
See?
The guy's ready to go.
We're done. We're done. I think we just
right.
completed.
Okay.
No.
Off to the song.
Hey, I would just add to what Eric said that I think in the same way the arts can lift a child, it can also invite an adult back to being a child in the way that Jesus says, you have to become like a child again to be a part of this kingdom.
I think that's why adults every once in a while need to read Dr. Seuss and Eric Carle. And some of the works of art that they did, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Those books, although for a younger mindset, help us. And then we need to get into more important things or deeper things, maybe, I guess might be a way of saying it. But every once in a while, it's important for us to go back to see what a child has.
Yes. Yep.
So anyway, we're done.
Yeah, okay.
Let's move.
All right,
Thanks
so
for
here's
coming
the
in.
next
Thanks for coming
song
in.
here. No. There's so much more to explore. I mean, this is a subject you're really passionate about. You're actually living it out. You had an event at your church recently where you invited a group of creatives. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Creative Mornings is an international group at this point, and they don't often meet in churches, but we're one of the only church here in South Florida that they meet in. And this is the second time they've come in, and when they come in, they ask me to get up and do a brief welcome. Right? So I get up there in front of all these creatives. There's probably 100, 150 people there. And these are, painters and marketing people, graphic designers, poets, comics, all these creatives. And I welcome them to our church. I tell them a little bit about our church's history. And then I get into, why do we care about the arts, right? And I say that we believe that God is an artist and that all of you are artists and that we're called to co-create together. And then I quoted them from the book that David Brooks has, where he says, essentially, culture is changed when a creative minority finds a beautiful way to live. And you would have thought, it was a revival happening because people were clapping. I mean, woo, And here I am as a pastor standing in front of a bunch of creatives, artists, who we can talk about more, but there's this divide historically for a little while now, right, between the arts and the church. And these people are believing in a vision that's really a biblical vision, and they're supporting it and clapping. And I invited them at the end of it to a group that we have on Wednesday nights called 1300 Art House. So many people, we had 6 new people come after Friday morning to the next Wednesday. We had new people coming to our church. people come, man, a church that cares about the arts. Like this was a kind of like, whoa, wow.
They care about the artist, I guess, is more important though, right?
Yeah, the art, yeah. But they care about the artist and they care about the creative fruit that these people are making, that there's a place for it in our community, that it's needed.
The thing is, art scares us because of what has been created of. I can't watch some TV shows with my kids that everybody says is great work of art because it's just brutal or it's just vulgar or whatever it is. And that's what people consider art. So there's this, I think part of the disconnect is we're scared of what might show up in some artwork.
Yeah. And if we've read the Bible, we realize that there's some things in the Bible that we're like, wow, because the Bible is art, right? The Bible has some really like the narrative storytelling of the Bible is like intense. Like you read the book of Judges, like that's a great movie, right? It's like really intense, a lot of color, a lot of action. And, the Bible is full of some stuff that is like, okay, child appropriate. What do we, it's the same way. We have to make things child appropriately, obviously. But the arts does have this way of breaking through and getting through to us. And that's why Scripture is full of stories and it's full of poetry and it's full of, wisdom literature and all the other things, the parables that Jesus teaches.
Yeah, and I think of even some of the words of the psalm that David said. There are some pretty scandalous things that he said as well.
Yes.
In his poetry.
Yeah.
So art is a reflection. Tell me what art is in the sense that it shows something, reveals something about us, or the creator, the artist.
Yeah, I think that this idea that God is an artist, right? For me became really important because I used to just think of God as a creator, and that was like a static idea. It's like God created the world, and now he's like an old man sitting back. He has a big beard, and he's just watching things, like the time maker. That was like one of those ideas about how God had created things, and he just watches us kind of do our thing. But this idea of an artist, like as I've encountered artists, they're these creative, risk-taking people. And there are people also who take vulnerable, steps. Anytime you've written a song or written something, or the first time you go on the air, right, doing your thing, it's very vulnerable. And as I've understood it, vulnerability is the way that we connect. And we have this God who is all about connection. I mean, the life of Jesus, who I would say is, the greatest artist of all time and the greatest work of art, is the one who reconnects us with God, reconnects us with each other. And so it's this incredible, vulnerable thing. And there is this risk to it. And I think that's what you're talking about, Eric, and what you're talking about, Brigitte, is there's this almost like a little bit of like a danger with it, right? And I think of Lewis's quote about love. If you're going to love anybody, it's dangerous because you could get hurt, right? But that's one of the reasons we need the arts so badly, is it does invite us into a deeper look into our own lives. It also invites us to see things maybe that we don't want to see, right?
So you're talking very like personal. How does a church do this though? How is your church opening up to the arts?
So one of the things that we've done is we are in this new neighborhood, or it's a neighborhood that's being redeveloped called the Cultural Quarter. And it's basically between Belvedere and Okeechobee, the train tracks and the water. The Norton Art Museum is in the center of it, and Norton Sculpture Garden. Palm Beach Atlantic has their dance and theater program like right across the street from our church. But we're all in this neighborhood, and we are positioning ourselves as the local art house for the community, for the neighborhood. We're not the Norton, we're not international artists, but we want to be a place like a hub, a catalyst, an incubator for local arts. So we've had so many things happening in our church already, creative things, artistic things. We're just now bringing it to the forefront as a part of our vision. But just since January, we've had, I think, 3 or 4 dance companies perform in our church. And these aren't just local. Some of them are, from across the country. We had Harlem City Ballet performing there, along with Natural Movers, Eric Esquire's group. We've had Demetrius Klein there. We've had hip-hop classes there. So it's super fun, right? We're having all this creativity happen in our church. Then we just hosted Women's Art Week, which was started by a woman named Gabby who's in our church. And it's the first ever Women's Art Week in Palm Beach County. And now it's officially recognized by the county, and we played host to it. We had a gallery in our sanctuary. We had a gallery in some of the rooms in our church. And then we had a closing concert on Saturday night with 3 female local artists. So all those things are happening. And then we've started this group on Wednesday nights called 1300 Art House. Myself and he was a missionary, a Baptist missionary in Brazil and in Paris, France. He also lived in Canada, but he's this artistic, creative guy. He just wrote a children's book. He's got his own Spotify, songs that he's putting out there. And he's a grandpa, and he's like has all this creativity. So he and I, we were going to do this cohort with Fuller Seminary in California, and he was like, Keith, we can do this together. His name's Dave Brazil. He's like, we can do this together, man. I think we can do it even better. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but he's like, yeah, let's just do it. So we just put out, an invitation to creatives and artists to come, and it's open to the city. And we have new people come every week. There's at minimum like 20 people there, and 2 people volunteer every week to start us in some kind of creative experience, right? And last night, this was like the pre-creative experience, but last night it was introduce yourself, your name, and then your favorite dance move. But you couldn't just say it. You had to get up and do it. And so we have like, a 70-year-old man getting up doing the pogo, which I didn't even know what the pogo was until last night. But watching this guy do that, and watching, somebody did the worm, and watching everybody doing this kind of stuff, like all of a sudden you start feeling this experience happening where you start feeling like a kid again. And you feel this permission to like play. And I felt like, oh man, I'm just like relaxing here, And I just felt like, oh, this is like something is happening here that's risky. Something is happening here that's engaging. And then I get to come alongside, and Dave gets to come alongside. We lead the group in these themed conversations. So last night it was about how the arts can create belonging and hospitality, the significance of doing the arts collaboratively, right? That we can build community with the arts. And we're literally doing it as we're talking about it, right?
As you talk about this, the Disney has art classes when you go up there, and one thing about their art classes is you draw on a piece of paper with a pencil, but there's no eraser, which is very problematic for me because I'm coloring outside the line or drawing outside the lines. As you talk about what's happening with the arts, the problem is there's no eraser. When you talk about being vulnerable and showing your work and opening up your church, things are going to be spilled. Things are going to get messy. Things aren't perfect when we're creating art. That's part of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that is part of the risk of it all, right? One of the guys who shared last night, the same guy who did the pogo thing, his name's Bill Parmalee. Awesome guy. He's been on the board of the Palm Beach Cultural Council as long as they've lived here. But when he lived in Charlotte, he was invited by he's a CFO. He was invited by the CEO or the president of the company to do a 14-week art like sabbatical, which meant every Friday he went to their local art museum for this course that was run by artists. And he told this story last night that essentially he was in this one class with this sculptor, and they had him bring out a piece of paper. Everybody had a piece of paper, and they had to draw a line from one corner to the other corner of the paper. And it was like, oh, just have fun with it. Do whatever you want, just be creative. And so they do that one line. And then he said, okay, now what we're going to do is you're going to have to draw that line over again. And now you're going to have to draw that line over again and over again. And they spent like 30 minutes trying to draw the exact line again. And then the sculptor at the end said, okay, now when you go back to work on Monday, what I want you to think about is how you may be putting the pressure on your people to create exact replicas of what you want. Instead of letting them draw the line the way they draw the line from the corner to the corner. And he's like, oh my gosh. Like setting his employees free to be able to be themselves to the best of their ability without having to be exact replicas, right? There's a risk in it. And yet there's this invitation that we find in our faith to let go of control, right?
Yeah, there's that freedom that comes with that. But you mentioned a CFO and artistry. So does that mean that we all have the capability to be artists?
Yes. And that's the whole thing. I told our group last night, I was almost on the verge of tears saying this to them, but I was like, guys, listen, part of my hope and dream as an artist is I'm creating, or I'm like a catalyst for this community, is for everybody in this group to see that they are an artist, and even more so that they are a work of art. Like when Jesus comes and gives his life for us, he's not just thinking like you're a piece of trash. He's actually reclaiming his art, right? To restore it, to renew it. And that we would see God as a living artist, that he is alive today. He is still creating, and we get to create with him. It helps me re-see like a holistic discipleship, right? A holistic way of living my life. It's not just I go to church on Sunday and sing some songs and be creative there. No, I get to be creative in everything I'm doing, right? All of life is art.
Yeah.
All of life is art. And just before we conclude, one of the verses I was reading yesterday, Ephesians 2:10, says we are his workmanship, or his poema, created to do good works.
Yeah, and we're his pottery, right? He's the potter and we're the clay. I mean, there's so many things. And I would just encourage people, right, that to like really basic things is if you have had a creative outlet in your life and now you're an adult and you don't have any time anymore, right, because you got 12 kids or whatever it is, consider tapping back into that. Like maybe you sang when you were a little kid and there's a choir at your church or something, or maybe you've done pottery classes when you were younger, or you painted. Like what would it look like for you to re-engage with that creative outlet? And the second thing is just to realize how much art is a part of your worship when you go to church on Sunday, right? You got songs, you got slides that are put up on the screen that have like an aesthetic to them, right? The preaching itself, the stories of Jesus, he's telling parables. That's an art form. It's like, it's everywhere, right? And it's so integrated, but we've had this broken relationship in the church since the Reformation, essentially in the Protestant church, and we've got to heal it, right? And our dream as a church is that we would get back to actually commissioning artists like the church did before the Reformation,
There are so many good things being said here that I guess the one point is find something. Maybe it's you don't go out to eat today, but you find a new recipe to create. That's something simple that you could do, right?
Yes, it's great. It's
Mm-hmm.
great.
All right.
Can I give you guys some gifts?
Yes, before we go. Yes, because we heard you had something. Now we're curious.
So Truth Belt, this friend of mine's son created these belts. He used to go to thrift stores and buy like high-end Gucci, stuff like that, and make old purses into like wallets and stuff. But now he's launching his own brand, Truth Belt. And so I brought you a belt, Eric.
Right. There you go. There's your
add some
art.
color to Eric's palette over there. And then I brought you way too many books, Brigitte.
Oh, I love books. I love books.
This one I can't give to you, but I want to tell you guys that this is your Brain on Art, the Neuro Arts Collaborative, how the arts transform us. My wife is a part of this organization. They're doing amazing work, but I'm going to get you a copy of that book.
Oh, that's
this
awesome.
is a local woman I have just connected with, Kate Volman. She wrote this book, Do What You Love. Mm-hmm. And then David Brooks, How to Know a Person. I've talked to you guys about this a lot.
Ever since you mentioned it, I wanted to get it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I can't wait to read that.
This is going to be part of my repertoire. I'm going to keep bringing gifts to you all, and we're just going to fill up this room.
I need this. Whoever this was that created this needs to connect to my son who does leather work.
Amazing.
They would be pals, I think.
Yes,
so.
we'll connect.
Okay, Pastor Keith Case, thank you so much. This series of Building a Flourishing Life is helping us, and I love where we went today. Thank you for your time.
Great being with you guys.
It is 28 minutes after 8 o'clock.